if you disagree with the United States, then people in Washington will say, what's the good of this organization? It's only getting in our way. Why do we bother with it?
So it's interesting to imagine the internal politicking going on, and it sounds like, as a speechwriter, you truly are the ultimate diplomat.
I don't know about that. I never thought of myself as a diplomat, but it's been a very interesting exercise, and I hope I've learned something about diplomacy in 7 years of doing it, yes.
So how do you feel about democratization of the Middle East today?
Well, I think it's a wonderful idea. As Gandhi once said when he was asked what he thought of Western civilization. I actually, as it happens, I was very much concerned with the Middle East when I was a journalist, and it's been apparent to me for a long time that there is a freedom deficit and a democracy deficit, particularly in the Arab world. And I remember writing in the Financial Times in early 1990, just after the fall of Ceausescu, that the conditions in some Arab countries, and particularly Iraq, were really worse than they had been in Romania, and that one shouldn't suppose that Arabs were not equally keen to have freedom and the right to govern themselves, just as Central and East Europeans were. And I think that what we're seeing now, if anything, bears that out. I believe that people all over the world would prefer to be masters of their own fate rather than in the hands of dictators.
So what do you feel are the biggest challenges regarding the Middle East and the democratization process?
I think the trouble is that in some parts of the Middle East, at least, democratization has become associated with military action by a few countries, which, for better or worse, are sometimes called imperialist countries. I mean, in the case of my own country, Britain, we can't really complain if people call us imperialist, because we used to have a very large empire, as you know. It probably seems much harder for Americans to accept that people could think of them as imperialist. But America is so powerful, and it has so much influence on the destiny of people around the world, that quite often it is seen like that. And so when you have military action taken, even if it is to overthrow a dictator, as in the case of Iraq, you will have a reaction. And a lot of people will say, well, these people are trying to impose their system of government on us, instead of sort of seeing it as something which gives them the chance to decide for themselves. I mean, I think many people, especially in Iraq, many people were pleased to be given the chance to decide for themselves, but then, in politics there's very little gratitude, and after a very short time people say, okay, maybe it was good that the Americans got rid of Saddam, but why are they still here, or why are they doing this or that when, we want to be running our own lives now? That, I think, is the big challenge, is to encourage a democracy that really comes from the grassroots and because people want it, and which is not seen as something being imposed from outside.
Well, this is a very interesting topic, and we'll continue on this conversation with Ed Mortimer, who is the Director of Communications and Speechwriter for the Secretary General Kofi Annan. Stay tuned after this break.
I wish I could go back when I didn't need someone to do my hair, back when I could still say my husband's name, back when I could have called 911 but didn't, back when I first felt the warning signs of a stroke but did nothing. I wish I could go back, but I can't.
With a stroke, time lost is brain lost. At the first warning signs, take action immediately.
Why do they call it a funny bone?
Why can't penguins fly? Like a sea safety.
Can we go to the moon on vacation?
If you think it's tough answering these questions, imagine the ones you'll get if your child is diagnosed with cancer. CureSearch.org can help. It's run by doctors and scientists whose research has led to an overall cure rate of 78%. You're not as alone as you feel.
Hi, welcome back to Miami's Global Connection. I'm Whitney Belker, and today we're shooting from the United Nations TV studio here in New York and have the honor to talk with Mr. Ed Mortimer, who is the speechwriter and Director of Communications for the Secretary General Kofi Annan. Thank you so much for being here again. And the previous segment, the conversations were just incredibly interesting, and we talked a little bit about the democratization of the Middle East, among many other topics. Now, I understand that there is a new summit coming up later this year. What can you tell me about that?
Yes, the summit will be held from 14th to the 16th of September, and we expect it to be the largest gathering of world leaders that there's ever been. At the last count, I think 173 had already committed themselves to coming, and that's out of 191 member states. That is a remarkable score. So I think it shows that people all over the world believe that the United Nations is a place where you can come together and work out common solutions to common problems. And God knows, in this world today, we have a lot of common problems. In fact, probably most of the big problems that you can think of, whether it's weapons of mass destruction, terrorism, infectious diseases, poverty, hunger, and even oppression and violation of people's human rights, they're very seldom contained within one country. The effects always spill over from one country to another.
So I think it's very good. Problems without passports.
Kofi Annan has called them that, yes, and sometimes he says the answer to that is blueprints without borders. So maybe that's what the people who are coming to this summit are hoping to produce.
So the people coming to the summits are government leaders?
Yes, I mean they're basically the prime ministers or the presidents of all those countries. Yes.
So 173 countries.
Well, that was, as I say, the last count. I mean, it may be more by now, for all I know, but it will be a very, very large and important gathering.
And that will be here in New York?
It will be here in New York, yes.
So I imagine security will be very tight, and yes, the city of New York will probably have lots of issues involving.
There are often traffic jams, but I remember when we had a similar gathering 5 years ago for the Millennium Summit in September 2000, there was a very nice editorial in the New York Times which said, if this were happening in any other city in the world, there would be flags in the streets and bands and children, with banners saying "Welcome UN." Because it's New York, all we can talk about is the traffic jams that it's going to cause.
So what do you think the main objectives of this summit will be, and what are the anticipated outcomes?
Well, I hope very much that the outcome will be actual decisions, not just a wish list, but commitments by governments to do things in 3 or 4 clear fields. One is development, in other words, having a real attack on the grinding poverty that is still, unfortunately, the lot of at least 1/5 of humanity in the world today. People, I mean, living on less than $1 a day. In the area, of course, of security, where we obviously need to work harder to have common defenses against things like terrorism and weapons of mass destruction, but also common machinery for keeping the peace and building peace in countries which have been through internal conflicts, and which so often, even after they've been pacified, they disappear from the headlines, we forget about them, and then a year or 2 later they're sliding back into civil war. I mean, that's basically what happened in Afghanistan in the 1990s. It's what happened in Haiti last year, and we really, it's a terrible waste of effort as well as a great shame for the people involved. So I think the world can do a better job of preventing that. That's in the security area, but also in human rights. We would like to see better machinery for protecting people's human rights and promoting them, and a stronger commitment to democracy and the rule of law. And we would like to see a United Nations that is really equipped. Obviously, it's not going to achieve, no institution is going to do all those things. Human beings have to do them in all the different countries. And
you have to have the political will of all the member countries.